Ethan Clarke sat alone in his office, staring at the encrypted message on his screen. The words swam before his eyes, almost too surreal to believe. The United Interstellar Council, the governing body overseeing human-alien relations, had chosen him, an unassuming geneticist, to undertake a task that would alter not only his life but the future of an entire species. The Xyrelians were a reclusive alien race, famed for their stunning beauty and mysterious ways. They were spoken of in whispers even among seasoned diplomats, their bioluminescent skin and melodic voices often likened to the celestial beings of human mythology. Yet beneath their ethereal appearance lay a grim reality: their species was dying. Generations of genetic bottlenecking had rendered them infertile, and only human DNA, carefully selected for compatibility, could revive their kind. "Why me?" Ethan murmured, leaning back in his chair. His voice sounded hollow in the sterile silence of the room. The answer was clear but no less staggering. He had been selected not only for his genetic profile, intelligence, health, and adaptability, but for his moral character. Ethan Clarke, a devoted husband and a man of principles, was deemed trustworthy enough to father the offspring of 4 Xyrelian princesses. The door to the office creaked open, and Clara, his wife of 10 years, walked in with a steaming cup of coffee. Her warm smile faltered when she saw the tension etched into his face. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting the mug down. Ethan hesitated. How could he explain this to her? How could he tell the woman he loved that he had been chosen for something so profound, so bizarre, and so deeply personal? Yet he knew there was no hiding it. He gestured for her to sit, and she did, her expression shifting from concern to wary curiosity. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice heavy. Over the next few minutes, Ethan recounted the contents of the message, stumbling over the words as he explained the Xyrelians' plight and his unwitting role in their salvation. Clara listened in stunned silence, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When he finished, the room felt oppressively quiet. "You can't be serious," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't ask for this," Ethan replied, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "They chose me, Clara. They're saying it's for the survival of their species." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "And what about us? What about our marriage? Do we not matter in this equation?" Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Clara, this isn't about me wanting this. It's about duty to humanity, to science, to something bigger than either of us." Her eyes flashed with anger and hurt. "Don't talk to me about duty. You're my husband, Ethan. You made vows to me, not to them." The weight of her words struck him like a physical blow. He had always prided himself on being a man of integrity, a man who honored his commitments. Yet now, he was being asked to betray the most sacred of those commitments for a cause he couldn't fully comprehend. "I haven't made any decisions yet," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I needed to tell you first. I needed you to understand." Clara stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Understand? How am I supposed to understand this? You're asking me to be okay with you fathering children with other women, alien women." She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "I can't do this, Ethan. I can't." She left the room before he could respond, her retreating footsteps echoing like accusations in the empty hallway. Ethan sat frozen, his mind racing. The following day, Ethan was summoned to the Xyrelian embassy, an awe-inspiring structure that shimmered with a light of its own, as though alive. The air inside was thick with a faint, sweet aroma that made his head swim. He was escorted into a grand chamber where the 4 princesses awaited him. Each was stunning in her own way. Lyra, the eldest, exuded regal authority, her bioluminescent skin shifting with hues of gold. Thus, quiet and enigmatic, had eyes that seemed to peer directly into his soul. Ovaris carried an air of playful confidence, her every movement graceful and deliberate. And Lena, the youngest, radiated a gentleness that was almost disarming. "Ethan Clarke," Lyra said, her voice melodic and soothing. "We thank you for coming. Your presence here is more significant than you can imagine." He opened his mouth to respond but found himself at a loss for words. Standing before these extraordinary beings, the weight of his situation felt crushing. Mrs. stepped forward, her gaze soft but intense. "We know this is not an easy decision for you. But understand, this is not merely about biology. It is about survival, about the continuation of a culture and a people who are on the brink of vanishing." Ethan swallowed hard, his thoughts a chaotic swirl of duty, guilt, and doubt. As the princesses each took turns explaining the stakes and expressing their gratitude, Ethan felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. Was it all empathy? Or something far more dangerous? When he finally returned home, Clara was waiting for him in the kitchen. She didn't look up as he entered, her focus fixed on the cup of tea in her hands. "Did you meet them?" she asked, her voice flat. "Yes," he admitted. "And?" Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. "They're desperate. They're counting on me, honest." She looked up then, her eyes red-rimmed but fierce. "I can't be part of this, Ethan. If you go through with this, I don't know if I can stay." Her words hit him harder than any of the arguments they'd had before. He nodded slowly, unable to meet her gaze. That night, as Ethan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, he realized he was standing at a crossroads. Whatever choice he made, there would be no going back. Ethan stood in the heart of the Xyrelian embassy, an otherworldly chamber bathed in soft, shifting hues of violet and silver. The walls glimmered like liquid starlight, pulsating faintly as if alive. Despite its beauty, the space felt suffocating, and the weight of expectation pressed against his chest. 4 pairs of luminous eyes fixed on him, each gaze carrying a different emotion: curiosity, hope, and something deeper he couldn't yet name. Lyra, the eldest princess, stepped forward first. Her regal bearing was accentuated by the golden patterns flickering across her skin, shifting like flames with her every breath. "Ethan Clarke," she said, her voice a symphony of grace and authority, "we understand the burden placed upon you. But let me assure you, this is no mere obligation. It is a bond, a union that will transcend species and time." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but his throat felt dry. The words he wanted to say, words of refusal, of protest, were drowned out by the intensity of her gaze. He felt naked under it, as though she could see every thought, every fear, every hesitation laid bare. Nemesis, the enigmatic second princess, glided forward. Her voice was quieter, almost hypnotic, carrying a lyrical cadence. "Your thoughts betray you, Ethan. You feel torn, do you not? Between loyalty to your mate and the impossible task we have placed before you. Know this, we do not seek to sever your bonds. We seek only to create life from the ashes of our kind." Her words resonated in his mind, not just heard but felt. Ethan flinched slightly, realizing the Xyrelians were capable of telepathic communication. In an instant he felt Nws's emotions wash over him. A profound loneliness, a quiet desperation, and the fragile hope that clung to his presence like a lifeline. It was intimate, overwhelming, and deeply unsettling. He took a step back, breaking the connection. I don't know if I can do this," he admitted, his voice trembling. "This isn't just a scientific experiment. It's my life. My marriage. I can't just step into this like it's nothing." The youngest princess, Delina, moved closer, her bioluminescent patterns shimmering in soothing blues and greens. Her presence was softer than her sister's, less imposing, almost comforting. "We do not wish to cause you pain, Ethan," she said gently. "But understand that our pain is no less real. For centuries, we have watched our people diminish. Every cycle, fewer of us are born, and now, we are the last of our line. Without you, there will be no future for the Xyrelian people." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and Ethan felt a pang of guilt twist in his chest. He wanted to look away, but her vulnerability held him captive. Thelina's sincerity, her quiet courage, stirred something in him, something he wasn't ready to face. It was Ovaris, the third princess, who finally broke the heavy silence. She stepped forward with a playful smirk, her every movement graceful and deliberate. "Forgive my sisters," she said, her voice warm yet teasing. "They always take everything so seriously. You're a human, yes? Then let us appeal to your humanity. Surely, you understand the desire to protect those who cannot protect themselves?" She leaned closer, her gaze playful but piercing. "This isn't just about duty, Ethan. It's about connection. Creation. Surely, you can see the beauty in that?" Ethan felt his resolve falter further. Ovaris's confidence was intoxicating, her words striking at the core of his conflicted emotions. His logical mind told him to resist, to hold firm to the promises he had made to Clara. But his heart whispered that perhaps this wasn't as simple as betrayal or duty. Perhaps it was something far more complex. For the next several hours, the princesses took turns sharing their stories. Lyra spoke of the Xyrelian Empire's golden age, of its accomplishments and its gradual decline. Emesis described the intricate cultural rituals of their people, rituals now rendered meaningless by the absence of new life. Thelina revealed her fears, the quiet terror of being the last generation, of bearing the weight of an entire civilization's hopes. And Ovaris, ever the optimist, spoke of renewal, of the potential for a future brighter than their past. Each story chipped away at Ethan's defenses, drawing him deeper into their world. He found himself captivated by their voices, their gestures, the subtle ways their emotions played out in the shifting light of their bioluminescence. He saw not just princesses but individuals, complex, vulnerable, and achingly real. By the time the session ended, Ethan felt as though he had been unraveled and pieced back together in a form he barely recognized. The princesses escorted him to the embassy's exit, their gazes lingering on him as he stepped into the cool night air. Back on Earth, Ethan returned to a home that no longer felt familiar. Clara was in the kitchen, her back to him as she stirred a pot of soup. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken words. "I met them," he said finally, breaking the tension. Clara's hand paused mid-stir. "And?" Ethan hesitated, the memory of the princesses' voices and the weight of their emotions still fresh in his mind. "They're not what I expected. They're real, Clara. They're scared. They need me." Clara turned to face him, her expression a mix of anger and heartbreak. "And what about me, Ethan? Do I need you any less?" Her words hit him like a hammer, and he felt the fragile threads of his life unraveling further. He wanted to promise her that she came first, that nothing had changed. But deep down, he knew it wasn't true. The conflict inside him raged on, unresolved, as the night stretched ahead, a dark, endless void filled with impossible choices. Ethan stood in the Xyrelian ceremonial chamber, his heart pounding as he faced the 4 alien princesses. The space was alive with energy, its walls glowing in a soft rhythm that seemed to match his unsteady breaths. The air was thick with a sweet, intoxicating scent that clouded his thoughts and heightened his senses. The time for deliberation was over. Lyra, the eldest, stepped forward, her golden bioluminescence casting faint halos of light around her. Her regal demeanor was tempered with a rare vulnerability as she spoke. "Ethan, this is your final moment to decide. If your heart carries doubt, you may leave now. But if you choose to stay, you will forever be part of our people's history." Her words carried no judgment, only hope, and Ethan found himself wishing they did. A firm rejection would have given him clarity. But instead, he was trapped in his own indecision, torn between 2 impossible futures. He thought of Clara, her voice, her touch, the quiet strength of their life together. He thought of the way her eyes had pleaded with him not to go. Yet the image of the princesses, their haunting beauty and desperate pleas, loomed just as large in his mind. Ence broke the silence, her voice low and steady. "You fear you are betraying your mate?" she said, her luminous eyes locked onto his. But consider this. What greater betrayal would there be than allowing an entire civilization to perish when you hold the power to save it? Her words struck deep. Ethan closed his eyes, searching for clarity but finding none. The weight of his choice threatened to crush him. Slowly, he opened his eyes and looked at each princess in turn. Lyra's determination, NYSS's calm intensity, Ovaris's playful warmth, Thelina's quiet hope. They were more than symbols of their dying race. They were individuals, living, breathing beings who had entrusted him with their survival. His voice faltered, then grew steadier. I'll do it. A visible wave of relief washed over the princesses, their bioluminescence brightening in response. Thelina stepped forward, her expression one of quiet gratitude. Thank you, Ethan. You have given us a future. The ceremony began, an elaborate series of rituals that bound Ethan to the Xyrelian royal line. The details blurred in his mind, songs that vibrated through his chest, light patterns that danced across the walls, and a shared connection through telepathic threads that revealed pieces of the princess's deepest fears and hopes. The intimacy was unlike anything Ethan had ever experienced. By the end, his body and mind were utterly drained, yet a strange sense of purpose had taken root within him. The princesses thanked him one by one, each expressing their gratitude in their own unique way. Lyra's parting words lingered in his mind. You are no longer just a man of Earth. You are a part of us now. But the sense of accomplishment was fleeting. When Ethan returned home, the atmosphere in the house was suffocating. Clara was waiting for him, sitting at the dining table with a glass of wine. The dim light cast shadows across her face, and her expression was unreadable. You're back, she said, her voice flat. Ethan hesitated in the doorway, unsure of how to respond. Clara, don't, she interrupted, holding up a hand. I don't want your explanations. I just want the truth. Did you do it? The weight of her question bore down on him. He couldn't lie, not to her. Yes, he said softly. For a moment, she said nothing, her face a mask of controlled emotion. Then, slowly she nodded as if she had already known the answer. I thought I could handle this, Clara said, her voice trembling. I thought I could tell myself it was for the greater good, that it wasn't personal. But it is, Ethan. It is personal. You didn't just betray me. You chose them over us. Clara, it wasn't like that, Ethan said desperately. This wasn't about choosing them over you. It was about saving lives, saving an entire species. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, she snapped, standing up. You just didn't choose me. Her words cut deeper than anything he'd felt before. Clara stepped past him, her hand brushing his arm briefly before she stopped. I'm leaving, Ethan. I can't stay here and pretend this didn't happen. He turned to face her, panic rising in his chest. Clara, please. Don't do this. I love you. She looked at him then, her eyes filled with tears. Maybe you do. But love isn't enough to fix this. Not for me. The next few days passed in a haze. Clara moved out, leaving behind only a note that read, I hope you find peace with the choice you made. I just can't be part of it. Ethan buried himself in his work, trying to escape the growing emptiness in his chest. The Xyrelians kept their promise, sending updates on the princess's progress. Each message confirmed that the genetic bond had succeeded, that new life was growing within them. But the news brought little solace. The magnitude of what he had done felt hollow without Clara by his side. One night, Ethan found himself staring at the stars, the vastness of the universe stretching out before him. Somewhere out there, the Xyrelians were rebuilding, their hope rekindled. And yet, here on Earth, he felt more lost than ever. He had saved a species, but at what cost? The stars offered no answers, only silence. And as Ethan stood there, caught between pride and regret, he realized that some choices carried consequences too vast to ever fully reconcile.